One of the biggest misconceptions that not just we see, but also even, the folks that we work with in talent acquisition, unfortunately see from some of their organizations is that, this thought that, oh, D&I is fixed with hiring, like, oh, we just need to get people through the door and then that, the problem is fixed. But unfortunately, getting diverse individuals through the door is only, really one step in the process. It shouldn't even be the first step.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Nadya Collins. She's the COO at Us in Technology. Nadya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Nadya, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm Nadya Collins. I'm currently the fractional COO at Us in Technology. So for those who don't know Us in Technology, Us in Technology's mission really is to diversify the tech industry. And the way that we've been able to do that has been by building a community of historically underrepresented professionals and talent, and bridging the gap between them and the hiring tech companies. In addition to that, I also provide coaching and workshops on the topic of customer success as well as career development. And I do some digital volunteering on the side at some nonprofits through this portal. I don't know if you know Catch a Fire. Really awesome. But yeah, been able to do some side work there.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you've got your hands in a lot of different baskets. And I'm curious to dive, not only into your, experience a little bit, but also too about Us in Technology before we kind of dig any deeper. And you talked about bridging the gap. Talk to me. How does Us in Technology work to do that?
Yeah, of course. So maybe it'll be helpful if I go back to kind of like the origin story of Us in Tech. So Us in Technology was founded in 2019 by Kendrick Trotter. And the way that it really started was kind of out of, wanting to give back to his community. And he started mentoring people within his community and teaching them and educating them about his own personal experience. He had got into tech sales himself not long before that point. And so he wanted to share sort of like that knowledge and that, opportunity to wealth, honestly. And started, really mentoring people in his community. So that's kind of how, how that started. And then in 2020, he really started to build relationships with hiring tech companies. And that's really how he brought those two together. So, helping the community be educated and getting them prepared for that, for especially like those initial interviews, and then building relationships with the hiring tech companies, of which I actually was one of their first customers back in 2020. And that's how I got to know Us in Tech.
That's fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about the growth then that you've seen with Us in Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely been a journey, right? So like I said, it really originated from more like mentorship and then, kind of going into placement. So the way that Us in Tech really originated was more of a services type business. And then in 2021, 2022, that's really when we started to explore and transition to more like subscription type packages. So we tried to sort of look at what gave value to our customers and try and bundle that to more like annual packages, et cetera. So from a growth perspective, I think we started back in 2020 with maybe like 3 or 4 customers, and now there's I don't know how many, over 60 partners, I believe. And from a placement perspective, over 200 people have been, placed and found jobs. So that, think about the social impact of that, right? Folks that maybe were earning, a fraction of what, they're earning now, and for them to be able to, have that income and give that back to the community and their families as well.
And I imagine too, the work that you do on the side for coaching, for mentorship, really leans into the work that Us in Tech is doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I feel like, like even though maybe you join a company and you leave a company, you never really leave, at least, if you build good relationships with, with your team, you oftentimes tend to, continue those relationships even after you leave a company. So many of the folks that I mentor today are actually folks that I've worked with in the past.
Wow, that's fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about how Us in Tech is really able to differentiate itself from its competition. Because I know you mentioned, the focus on, underserved populations and bridging that gap. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, it really is the people. And we lean very heavily on our community because that's the most wonderful thing about the communities, really. Like, it's not just about people's personal success and being successful themselves. A lot of it is like done in a sort of group format and people helping each other out. Like if I look at sort of the community and this, some of the conversations that happen on our platform, it's a lot about hey, does anybody need like some help with like doing mock calls, etc. And so there's a certain drive, I think, that comes from the folks that have joined our community as well, that we've been told from our customers you often don't find perhaps elsewhere. And so that's really what sets us apart is the talent and really the drive that exists within our talent.
I love that. And the people, that's great. And, that's really the root of, many successful companies is, the people. And I think that's fantastic that you're really able to lean in on those communities. So, Nadya, I'm curious to hear, do you ever hear any common misconceptions or things that people think are necessarily true, which aren't necessarily accurate?
Oh my goodness. So a lot, but I think one of the biggest ones, and I've talked to a number of folks in talent acquisition about this actually, and one of the biggest misconceptions that not just we see, but also even the folks that we work with in talent acquisition unfortunately see from some of their organizations is that this thought that, oh, D&I is fixed with hiring, like, oh, we just need to get people through the door and then that, the problem is fixed. But unfortunately, getting diverse individuals through the door is only, really one step in the process. It shouldn't even be the first step because you kind of need to have your house in order before you, like want to attract and hire, diverse professionals. But really what we've seen is where success really lives is where there is an inclusive culture built, or at least you're working towards that. And, the values that you set that are set by especially the founders and by the leaders, making sure that there is a support structure and there's development and also just education across the company, changing from, a very homogenous sort of like environment and culture and everybody speaks and talks and does the same way into, like something that is more diverse and inclusive. It takes effort and it takes some time. And I think a lot of companies just, maybe don't realize that.
Yeah, no. And it sounds like it really takes, the effort, that it's not just something that you can fall by the wayside. And that's why it's so important to work with companies like Us in Tech, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, like what I said about, having a support structure, sometimes you maybe don't have that yet built out in your company, but you can lean on, Us in Technology because there is an existing community there and people can share like, challenges or problems or whatever it is that they, or opportunities that they want to work on together. And that's, oftentimes like just very valuable to a person, especially as they're going through something that is completely new and they don't have any experience in it. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, pivoting a little bit, Nadia, you mentioned that you're the fractional COO at Us in Tech.
mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, I always like to ask people for the best advice that they've always been given. However, you and I had a little bit of a conversation off camera about the worst career advice you've ever received. And I have not heard this story, and I would love to kind of dive into that.
Okay, so again, this is, as you'll see with me, it's going to be a little controversial, but I'll untangle it. So give me a moment. But
Okay.
I'm going to say it. And the worst advice that I've heard out there is don't burn bridges. And in itself, like you're like, wait, what's wrong with like not burning bridges? And I'm like, okay, so let me untangle that with a little bit of context. I'm not saying like, oh, take a proverbial, on your manager's desk if like when you're leaving. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, sometimes standing up for what you think is right, for what you believe is right, or speaking up when no one else is, will, how do you say, like, will make some people like you less, or consider those bridges burned, whatever it is. And oftentimes when challenging like the status quo, or any systems that are designed to benefit one group over another, you're going to feel like you're going to feel some resistance there. And I think sometimes when people say like don't burn bridges, it's almost like, oh, stay in line. And I think that's not the right way. I think it's okay to, sometimes you have to burn some bridges to make change.
Mm-hmm. And also too, certainly talking about growth, wanting to, what's best for, personally for people, professionally for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, I think that's really interesting. And I haven't really thought about that, talking about like, it's okay to say, I've outgrown this, or, and move on, and
Yeah.
say, we don't necessarily have to keep in touch. Maybe that relationship
Yeah.
isn't benefiting you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes you really do just have to have a relationship professionally, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Nadya, like you said, you're fractional COO, sorry. Talk to me a little bit about what's next for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been really grateful for the past, especially like 8 months. I've had an opportunity to explore some personal projects, do a little bit of travel, and then the last couple of months really like helping out us in tech in a fractional way. But I'm really excited to explore new full-time opportunities. So that's something that I'm working on right now. I have a couple of conversations currently, so I'm super excited. Hopefully, something mission driven and something that'll continue to challenge that status quo.
I love that. That's terrific. Well, Nadya, I think this has been an amazing conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be advice, anything about us in tech, about kind of the ventures and the journey that you're on? Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, obviously, like I'll do the plug to Us in Technology. If you are looking for a community, and you're part of the underrepresented professionals, please check out Us in Technology. Or if, you're in talent acquisition and you're looking to partner with somebody who can't, who doesn't just increase the pipeline of diverse talent, but also helps you tap into coachable and coaching communities, please, reach out to me. And yeah, if there are any professionals or leaders that are just looking to give back and volunteer, also just hit me up.
Terrific. Fantastic. Well, Nadya, like I said, this has been an amazing, insightful, and, a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on Business Ninjas today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, great to have you.